What's up, everybody? Big day coming up on GoJo and Golic. You know we got to talk about the New York Mets. Grimace and company do their thing and punch their ticket to the NLCS. We'll talk about one of the more unlikely runs we've seen in Major League Baseball this season. And then the agenda, a certain subsect of Saints fans, that's hard to say, get to see something they've been hoping for all year long. Some Spencer Rattler at the helm for this offense. And college football, we'll take a look at some of the best teams in the country, where they stack up heading into a massive weekend, and talk to Arkansas Razorbacks head coach Sam Pittman. Let's do the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. No Jesse Cofield today, having a much deserved day off here. We are presented by GoJo and Golic is presented by Campbell's Chunky Soup that eats like a meal. We got a fun one coming up for you guys today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings network. Warren Moon, the Hall of Famer, my dad's former teammate with the Houston Oilers, going to stop by as we look ahead to some Thursday night football coming up tonight. As mentioned, Sam Pittman, the Arkansas Razorbacks coach who authored one of the massive upsets of last weekend at home against the Tennessee Vols, going to take us inside a field storm. I always love seeing what goes on and hearing the stories from a good field storming. Dad, were you a part of any of those when you were at Notre Dame? Did people storm the field in the 80s?
Well, they stormed the field in the 80s. I didn't play in the olden days. I mean, but I was unfortunately never part of games where we stormed the field. My biggest win was, I believe, my sophomore year was at Pitt. And when Dan Marino was the quarterback, their whole offensive line ended up in the NFL. I ended up playing against them then and in the NFL. And they were 7-0 and number one in the country, and we beat them. But it was in Pitt, so there was only, no storming of the field. We had no storming of the field wins in my years. Unfortunately, it was not like your fifth year where you guys went undefeated and had plenty of opportunities.
It's ironic, though, the first field storming we had, as people always try and legislate fun in college sports, was when we beat a ranked Utah team at home in Brian Kelly's first year. We had been bad for a while. Our coach had been fired the year before. Our fans needed something to get excited about. Utah was ranked like 17, and we're Notre Dame, and we stormed the field. And I could hear the people at home griping about a program like Notre Dame doing that. It was fun as hell down there. And getting to my favorite thing is, there's being a part of the field storming as one of the players on the field, as one of the coaches, like we'll talk with Sam Pittman about. When I was at Notre Dame, our basketball team upset, I want to say it was like Louisville or Syracuse, our men's team, and I got to storm the court as a part of that as a fan, which once I did that and went through that, it really colored my view of field and court stormings different, because I'm like, this is awesome. I saw like guys and their girlfriends kissing out there like they were soldiers coming home from war. Everyone was yucking it up with the players on the team that we all knew. Why wouldn't you want people to experience that? It's great.
Yeah, I always kind of chuckle when people say, "Oh, you shouldn't storm the court, storm the field." Hell, if you want to do it, have fun and do it. Even though it costs you money now in the
Yes.
SEC. It costs you $100,000 to storm the field. So it better, I guess, from the administration standpoint, it better be more worth it and not just an arbitrary game.
So we will find out then if Sam Pittman believes this was worth the usual six-figure fine that they got in Arkansas for a big win there. But, Dad, I'd imagine if the fans at Citi Field could have stormed it last night, they probably would have. Let's talk about these New York Mets. Francisco Lindor, man, went ahead and did it, helped the Mets punch their ticket to their first NLCS since 2015 on the backs of a grand slam late in this game. And, Dad, if you've been following the Mets at all, anyone out there, from the 0-5 start to losing 15 of 19 games in May, a players-only meeting that led to a 72-42 record since that point in time, the New York Mets have been the comeback kids all year long. And so it was no surprise, down one in this game when they needed a hero. Francisco Lindor, who as of late has just had whatever clutch gene you believe in sports in his bloodstream, and went and absolutely clobbered that one. Dad, I have never rooted for the Mets. I have no interest in the Mets whatsoever outside of covering them like this. And I was still sitting in my living room by myself, hands on my head, screaming, oh my God, oddly enough, the single that's also helped propel this team, watching him round the bases, calm, cool, and collected, as he probably realized in that moment, we've got a really good chance to now finish the job the way they did against the Philadelphia Phillies and move on to face whoever comes out of the other series here. What impressed you about this Mets run overall to get them now to this point?
Oh, I mean, just their continuity of finding a way late. I mean, we'll read a stat that's a mouthful as far as when they took the lead in games. I mean, stats in baseball are unbelievable. And I'll probably let you read that stat because I'll garble it up. I mean, it is an amazing stat. But listen, it's a game last night where the first and second inning they had bases loaded. They left runners stranded. They left 8 runners stranded in the first 5 innings. So I'm sure Met fans were and players were like, wait, are we going to be able to get this done, or just keep doing it and we'll get one across? And sure enough, in the 6th, they load the bases with nobody out. 9th hitter grounds out into a force out at home plate. The Phillies bring in Carlos Estevez, their closer, on Lindor, who's leading off. I think it was a 2-1 pitch or a 1-2 pitch that he sends over the wall for a 4-1 lead. I mean, just the Met fans and players should be used to this by now, though you never get used to it. You should be used to it and what they've done. And listen, it got dramatic at the end with the Phillies with runners on the corners, first and third. Kyle Schwarber up. One swing of his bat could have tied it up 4-4 going to the bottom of the 9th, but he strikes out, and the Mets go on to celebrate. I mean, it's been an incredible run, as you mentioned, from 0-5 to losing 15 of the first 19. They were 24-35 to now in the NLCS. First time they got to celebrate a series clinching game at Shea, which is 16. I mean, at Citi Field, which is 16 years old. The last time they did it was in 2000 at Shea. So it's been fun times for the Mets and Grimace and the oh my God, the thing that they hold up after the home runs, the sign. What a run. What a run. And the Phillies disappointed again. In 22, the Phillies lose in the World Series to Houston. In 23, they lose lose games 6 and 7 in the NLCS to Arizona. They just can't get over the hump.
It is funny. I was thinking about what home run that Francisco Lindor grand slam hit reminded me of. And while the stakes are different, this is to send them to the championship series and not the World Series at this point. But it was that Bryce Harper home run in 2022 that helped send the Phillies to the World Series, that shot heard around the world there. That was another addition to his clutch postseason hitting. And that's how it felt with Francisco Lindor. And, Dad, in a day and age where we're big fans of passion in sports here. We love personality showing up in sports. So bat flips, pimping home runs, all that stuff. I love that. Show the personality off. There's something so cold about a dude hitting a home run in that kind of situation and almost treating it like an announcer. I thought Adam Amin and company did a great job at the end of this game laying out. Adam calls the final out of this game, and then they don't say anything for what felt like the next 5 minutes while you just drink in the scene at Citi Field. It was the same with that Lindor home run where he knew he didn't have to do anything. The crowd was going to do the work, and he just calmly drops the bat and runs the bases like this is a home run in game 50 of the regular season. And it was that kind of clutch hitting that's become par for the course and that kind of comeback. You mentioned the stat I'm about to read, Dad. For the New York Mets, you look at their last week and a half now, courtesy of Jason Stark over at The Athletic. This was the first week in Mets history, going from last Monday to Saturday through the beginning of the NLDS, where they had 4 innings of 4 runs or more in the 5th inning or later, all while trailing. So finding a way to come back and produce big time at the end of games when they were down. It was the shortest span they had ever done that. Before it was 10 days. Here it was 6, but if you expand it out, it was the same last night. They were down 1 going into the 6th inning, and then a run for 4 runs yet again off that grand slant hit by Lindor. It is unbelievable to see, Dad, what happens for a team that just gets hot at the right time. And we hear belief from all these guys, but you've been around enough locker rooms and sports to know that there is something, too, when you get in those situations, having the amount of reps and the experience to know we know how to handle this, not, oh, my God, lights are really bright. We haven't had a chance like this in a long time. Now you crumble in the moment because everyone's looking around wondering who's going to make the big play and not stepping up to make it themselves.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's a nice sample size of the times they've done it in the last 6 days to give the team confidence, knowing that if they're behind, they can come from behind because they did it multiple times. Yes, it is absolutely a mental thing to say we're in it. We're always going to be in it because of our ability to come back, which we've shown we can do. So, yeah, I mean, players are human beings like everybody else. You know, there's the positive mental and there's the negative mental. If they hadn't come back and lost, you know, there would be all these times there would be thoughts of, man, can we come back? Well, they've shown they can come back, and now they sit and wait on the winner of the Dodgers and the Padres. Dodgers smoked the Padres 8-zip last night. And that even up that series. Well, that series is 2-2, right?
Yep. That series is 2-2.
Yep, that series is 2-2. So they'll go back to L.A. For that deciding game, and then the Mets just wait. They're the only ones that clinched last night, so they're the only ones that get to really celebrate.
Yep, as you mentioned, the Dodgers went out there and blasted the Padres, so they even that one up. The Yankees, unfortunately, ruined Patrick Mahomes' bye week early, and they got a 3-2 win on the road in Kansas City. They take a 2-1 lead in that series. And Detroit, Dad, unfortunately, looking like they might try and send your Guardians home. They won 3-0 and are up 2-1 in that series now. So the baseball has been good this postseason. You and I, not the biggest baseball fans in the world, but it is hard not to be romantic about it this time of year. So somewhere right now, Mrs. Met celebrating this one with Grimace, and surely not her husband, because we know the nature of that relationship for those two mascots.
Absolutely.
So I can't believe we haven't gotten that in a world where mascot infidelity runs rife and where people obviously have concerns about Mr. and Mrs. Met, especially once they had to combine Twitter accounts. That didn't smell like someone who trusts their significant other. I got to imagine Grimace has been lurking.
You got to think Mrs. Met didn't go home last night, right? I mean,
no.
Just didn't happen.
No, I don't think so. So we'll wait and see the aftermath of that one for those two. I don't root for that. Maybe they have their own arrangement, to each their own. Love wins. Dad, let's move on from what we saw last night to what we're looking forward to tonight. Thursday night football. And anytime you get it in the division, it feels a little bit extra special. And for both of these teams now, Dad, especially the San Francisco 49ers, both coming off losses. The Seattle Seahawks, a little more stunning to the New York Giants, maybe a victim of the Dan Campbell Lions effect that we talked about, courtesy of Chris Long. But who do you think needs this one more at this juncture in the season?
Well, I mean, listen, that's always an interesting question. They both need it, but you look at San Francisco, we expected them to rule the division, and they're not right now. It's Seattle at the top, so you would probably just naturally say, well, the 49ers do. They've been battling with injury. They haven't been looking like the 49ers that we're used to looking like, so they need to get it back on track, get to 500. But, I mean, it's still early in the season where both teams can use it. You're just looking for some improvement, for the 49ers. 49ers used to rule yards after the catch, right? They've ruled it under Kyle Shanahan. It has not been as good this year, especially for a Brandon Ayuk who finally broke out, You know, he just had 29 yards after the catch in his first 4 games, but had 48 in week 5. So that's the 49ers we're kind of used to see their receivers and running backs who catch out of the field, though there's no Christian McCaffrey for really a running back to catch it out of the backfield. But so for the receivers or tight ends to gain yards after the catch, and they need to try and get back into that swing, which puts the onus on that Seattle defense to try and keep the receivers in front of them and make the tackles on what has become a short passing NFL.
Yeah, you mentioned just 29 yards after the catch in his first 4 games for Brandon Ayuk. He recorded 48 yards after the catch in game 5. And yeah, Dad, it's sort of a total about face for this team in terms of yards after catch and then tight window throws. Brock Purdy's had to fit it into a keyhole way more often. It used to be this thing that we would quite honestly hold him to a different standard to than we would a lot of the other top offenses in the NFL that also produced more wide open throws, more separation. But Brock Purdy's thrown into a tight window on almost a quarter of his throws this season. Kyle Shanahan's offense from 2017 to 2023 averaged a tight window throw rate of just 14%. That was 5th lowest in the NFL over that span. So things have been different this season. They've adjusted every year, which is what all these Shanahan-McVay guys do. The biggest difference, I think, for this game, Dad, and the biggest question is, as always with Thursday night, is health. What this looks like for the Seattle Seahawks, who right now are having linebacker Uchenna Nwosu heading to IR. Byron Murphy's been ruled out. Reek Woolen's been ruled out for their game. Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, and Julian Love are all questionable going into this one. On a defense, Dad, that got pushed around against the Giants. That was the thing that surprised me the most, was that Daniel Jones in that offense that had no Malik Neighbors, no Devin Singletary in the backfield, went out and were actually able to move people up front, which is an area that I'd had the most concern early about Mike McDonald's defense and how it translated there in Seattle. But it really manifests there. So if you're the 49ers in an offense that got bogged down in the red zone a bit, and I think a little too reliant on some of the passing game once you got inside the 20, you've got an opportunity against a defense that is banged up and reeling and coming off a short week where you can go and reestablish that run game and try and make that something you can win with in the red zone again.
Yeah, and also the fans are getting used to, as we keep mentioning, it's a short throw NFL, but you may see more fireworks from Seattle because DK Metcalf has over half of his receiving yards, like 212 of his 400 and some receiving yards this year are on go routes. He has the most yards on go routes. So fans, you know, it's still not just cover 2 ruining the game. You still will see some go routes and some deep balls, and that's one way to avoid the rush, is to take the snap, take a couple of steps, and just throw it deep, throw it up, and let DK Metcalf run underneath it.
Yeah, and that requires protection though, and that's always been the big issue for Seattle this year, is can they protect long enough for Geno Smith to be able to get downfield to some of those deep guys. It's why I think Jackson Smith-Njigba has done as well as he's done this season, because he's been more of the intermediate option for those guys opposite that. And this is a game where I think if you're Seattle, I get the pressure numbers say that your tackles have given up more, but Charles Cross on the edge, Stone Forsythe's been a backup in there. Abraham Lucas, unfortunately, just hasn't been healthy much in the last couple of years to form that bookend they thought they were getting a couple of years ago. But, Dad, that's kind of an interesting matchup of, you know, rocking a hard place, because for this 49ers outfit, the defense has been a little bit underwhelming again. They're going to wait and get Dre Greenlaw back at linebacker. That should help that some. But then the pass rushes, you bring Leonard Floyd opposite Nick Bosa to be that guy. 2 sacks in 5 games is a good start, but they kind of need that to go. Seattle would be a good place for that to happen, because to your point, they're going to give you a lot of opportunities. They want to go downfield. This team, there are different ways to take care of your offensive line. You can either batten down the hatches, put multiple tight ends in, try and pound the rock, or you can spread it out, give your quarterback the ability to see everything and try and rip it downfield. And when you got receivers like Seattle does, I get why they've gone with the latter, but it does put stress on that group up front. So Nick Bosa and Leonard Floyd and that pass rush for San Francisco definitely have an opportunity.
Yeah, they do, because Seattle isn't really known for running the ball. That's going to be a tough go for them. Though, like you said, the San Francisco defense has not been what we have known it to be. So a couple of sides of the ball trying to get back to where they need to be.
Yeah, this is a get-right game. Both these teams coming off big losses. San Francisco with a couple of tough ones in the division. So this very big for them as they're trying to notch what would just be their second win in the NFC West so far this season. We can get to more on Thursday Night Football later when we talk to Warren Moon. Coming up next, though, Aaron Rodgers got a chance to have his voice heard as accusations of his involvement in the end of Robert Saleh's Jets tenure were all over yesterday. You'll hear from him next on GoJo and Golic. Back to GoJo and Golic. We know the big news yesterday. Robert Saleh, the Jets head coach, had been shown the door after 5 games of the season. Jets owner Woody Johnson seems to have acted alone in this, but that didn't stop people from certainly wondering about the influence or impact of Aaron Rodgers in this decision. He's a guy who, since he's come over to the Jets, seems to have had a hand in everything and gotten most of what he's wanted in that organization. So Aaron Rodgers joined Pat McAfee, as he always does, and tried to put that to bed pretty quickly. Here he was.
As far as any of the ridiculous allegations out there, I'm not going to spend more than one sentence in response to it, and that is that I resent any of those accusations because they're patently false. And it's interesting the amount of power that people think that I have, which I don't. But I love Robert, and it was, one of those days yesterday.
So, Dad, obviously, Aaron's simultaneously right and wrong, right? Like, obviously, when we talk about players like him, players like LeBron, they're not sitting up in the meetings with the GMs going over the board of people they want, people they don't. Right. When he said Woody Johnson called him as more of a check-in because he got banged up at the end of that game, he kind of let him know what he was thinking, but it wasn't a discussion. I believe him on those fronts. At the same time, we've seen the amount of power Aaron Rodgers wields in that building. Nathaniel Hackett is literally employed there only because Aaron Rodgers likes him. Even Robert Robert Saleh was brought back this year in part because Woody Johnson knew Aaron Rodgers trusted and wanted him back. So how much are you buying the way Aaron's framing this?
Well, yeah, and a number of players, including Alan Lazard, and I understand it. I mean, you have basically sold your soul for a Super Bowl, bringing in a future Hall of Famer. So, I listen. Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. I mean, and they won, and then players wanted to stay and wanted to come there without the urging of Tom Brady. So, what makes this look ominous is that Woody Johnson talked to Aaron Rodgers Monday night, the day before Saleh was fired. So that looks like, oh, well, wait a minute. But as Woody Johnson said, you got hit a lot, was talking about other things, which you can believe or not believe. I'm not going to try and get into anybody's head. I will say it's the offense's fault that Robert Saleh is fired, right, which makes a lot of people wonder, why was Robert Saleh fired? And now, he has had a losing record, and people think this was the right move, but why not change what's going on in the offense? And that's Nathaniel Hackett calling plays. Now, again, you're not going to change systems. For those that are saying, the NFL is now a motion, movement, offensive systems, which I understand that. But all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers is not going to change that. You can put Todd Downing, who's the passing game coordinator, and his name has now started to come up as Nathaniel Hackett is still on thin ice, as Todd Downing is going to be maybe the guy that's going to be running the offense and calling the plays in the future. And again, it's not going to all of a sudden be this motion-filled offense. It's just going to be the same plays in the playbook, but how you call the plays, the way you call the plays. New York's been bad on first and second down, so you mix up the play calling, the type of play that you call. That's all that's going to change. You're not going to change a system. I can't sit here and say Aaron Rodgers told Woody Johnson to fire Robert Saleh. I mean, that's ridiculous to do.
I absolutely don't believe that. But at the same time, if Aaron didn't want Robert Saleh fired, probably wouldn't be fired, right? Like, at some point, there's the acknowledgement that what Aaron's wanted, what Aaron's got it. So if I get Woody Johnson's the owner, he might have been ticked off. But I shudder to think that if Aaron Rodgers really had been adamantly against that this would be something that would have happened. So that's, again, it's not placing blame on it. I'm not saying Aaron's some overlord in this case, but it's just curious how this went down, and curious what they do from here now, because people talk about part of the advantage is you can get a head start on looking towards other people. I saw Jeremy Fowler at ESPN put out a list of candidates that he thinks should be in the mix for this, and they're all the names that you would expect: Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, even Todd Monken in Baltimore. But to your Dad, to your point about the offense, who's going to want to take this job before they know what's going on at the end of the season? There is so much uncertainty about the future of this roster, the quarterback, the nature of the offense that you mentioned, that for all three of those guys would be a non-starter in terms of how they've gone out and been effective. Now, that's assuming they would all still call plays once they go on and become the head coach, which we know isn't a given. But you would imagine philosophically the fit with Aaron Rodgers couldn't be more oil and water. And so I think the Jets are one of those teams where, you might be done early with this, but in terms of finding someone who's willing to step up and take this job, you're going to have to wait a long time before the dust settles on what this team's immediate future looks like, and certainly what the quarterback's immediate future looks like.
It's ridiculous to look at potential candidates right now. It just makes no sense. And when we talk about firing a coach to get a jump start on the next coach, that's the last few games of a season. That's not week 5. Week 5 is, as Woody Johnson said, I think this roster is good enough for the playoffs and the Super Bowl, and we need to make a change now. Now, it's not good enough, I don't think, for the Super Bowl, but what you'll get, you may get that first week jump. Go back to Antonio Pierce taking over for the Raiders, right? And you got that jump right out of the gate. What did he end up going? 4-4, and then he retained the head coaching job, and they're not a good football team. Jeff Ulbrich, I mean, he's beloved by the players. You may get a jump. I mean, imagine what will be said if they pull off a win over the Bills this week, and Jeff Ulbrich's first week as the interim head coach, the Jets are in first place in the AFC East, right? everybody's going to be like, oh my God, he's the savior, except for Stugatz. Stugatz is going to sit back and understand that the bottom is still going to fall out at some point. You'll get that immediate game or two burst out of a team sometimes. I'm not saying you'll get it here. I'm not saying the Jets are going to beat the Bills, but that's when you get the burst, when that change is first made. You get that kind of reinvigoration, but then water finds its level. You settle into the team that you are. This is a team with a great defense and a bad offense right now. From quarterback on down, this offense is not good. And I don't think firing the head coach is going to change it. Now, maybe putting a different play caller in place, and again, changing up the way you call the plays may make a difference, but it's basically the same plays, just how you call them with the same personnel. Nobody new is walking through that door. Unless, there's Devontae Adams and the trade to the Jets, which, again, Devontae doesn't have control over it, of saying I won't report, but man, why would he want to go to that? That would be the only piece that could help this puzzle.
Yeah, I tend to agree. That's an execution-based offense. It always has been with Aaron, with Mike McCarthy as former head coach. Like, you see it playing out in Dallas and in New York pretty clearly. And so that's going to be a difficult road to go for them. You're right. They absolutely could win this weekend. The way that defense is playing, they're going to have a chance against damn near anybody. It's the same story as last year. Offensively and statistically, it's basically the same as it was last year. And that's with Zach Wilson and Mike White and all those guys that have come through this cavalry of dudes the last couple of years. Speaking of the cavalry, though, Dad, let's talk about the New Orleans Saints, because this has been fascinating. I don't know if you've been aware. Mina Kimes made me aware of this when I went on her podcast a while ago, before the season, about the agenda in New Orleans. Have you heard about this at all?
I have not. No.
So Spencer Rattler, their rookie fifth-round pick out of South Carolina by way of Oklahoma, was a guy we talked about in the pre-draft process. Fascinating player. Didn't have a ton of support around him at South Carolina this last year. Looked like he was playing quarterback in a burning building a lot of times, and managed to go and still somehow show out well for himself. Incredibly talented player. Someone who's been on the radar since he was a freshman going into college. He was one of those early stars in one of those reality shows that follow quarterbacks around. And so Spencer Rattler comes into this situation. Him and Jake Haener are the backups. When Derek Carr went down with that injury at the end of the game last week, Jake Haener went in as the backup. But they had time to sit and consider this week. And so now they decide to go out here and start Spencer Rattler, who a lot of Saints fans before the season, who might have been a little bit jaded about Derek Carr and his potential and the ceiling of this offense before the first couple of games where they were putting 40 burgers up on everybody, had started the hashtag agenda about people wanting to get Spencer Rattler out there and see what he could do at the helm of this said same offense. So, Dad, now at this point in the season, the agenda gets its chance to shine. How real of a chance do you think Spencer Rattler actually has of coming in and being successful in the environment that we just saw the Saints lose to the Kansas City Chiefs in?
Well, I mean, they're on the – oh, no, they're at home. They're at home against Tampa Bay, so that certainly helps. We won't have to deal with noise. Is this a case of the coach feeling that Jake Haener can't get it done, less confidence in Jake, or more confidence in what he's seen in Spencer Rattler in practice? Because that's all you have to go on, preseason games and practice. And again, I talk about practice a lot, of how you see a quarterback, in this case a rookie, how they're developing in practice. I know it's not a real game. I know it's not live, but still you have to go on something, and all you have is practice of how they're progressing in practice, how their comfort level is increasing in practice. You still don't know what it's going to be like in a game, but you can only judge it on what you see during the week. So I just think it's a combination of, Jake Haener, okay, maybe not a lot of confidence, and hey, Spencer Rattler's been coming along on the practice field and the classroom. Let's see what he can do.
Yeah, I completely agree. The problem now, the reason he's in there, and I heard them talking, Dennis Allen and his coaching staff, a bit about, hey, the mobility of a guy like Spencer Rattler at a time where your O-line's compromised, right? You've had backups in the middle of that offensive line with Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz out. And so Derek Carr, not the most fleet of foot guy, but a veteran quarterback, able to get the ball out. With Spencer, it's going to be a little bit more about his ability to buy time and try and get the ball to these weapons. And Dad, he had the right idea, because I heard him at the podium already waxing poetic about Chris Olave Bay. And when he gets out there, how many balls are going to be going in his direction? And so they're going to have to keep the main thing, and keep it pretty simple. I do think while Todd Bowles has a great reputation as a defensive coordinator for throwing a lot at guys, for being someone that's incredibly blitz heavy in their approach, which certainly you don't want for your rookie quarterback going out there in his first start, this Tampa Bay defense has been beat up for a lot of the season. The lack of Antoine Winfield in the back end has certainly affected them. And we saw against the Jets, you can score a bunch of points against this outfit, or excuse me, not against the Jets, against the Falcons. You can score a bunch of points against this outfit. So it's not an impossible task given how some of the other weapons in this offense have performed.
No, but you're right. If Todd Bowles brings the blitz, that means it'll be shorter passes, and they have to be kind of on point because you'll play man behind blitz. Normally, I say, not all the time. And Tampa Bay will try and make the tackle quickly for a 2, 3, 4 yard gain. The key as offensive coordinators and play callers know, especially with young quarterbacks, is get yourself into a third and manageable position where you're not locked in 3rd and 6 plus, 3rd and 7 plus, where you're locked into a pass down the field, where then you see that 3 yard in route and hope the receiver gets the other 4 yards for a first down instead of a play down the field. That's always just a damning thing to see. So a lot of it is trying to stay ahead of the chains and make these situations manageable for a young quarterback.
Yeah, and how they do that with an offensive line that's a little beat up is going to be fascinating for me. So I think a lot of that game is going to just come down to what the injury report looks like for Tampa Bay defensively, Dad. Antoine Winfield Jr. was a limited participant yesterday in practice, been dealing with that foot injury. And so how that goes with him as a guy who really unlocks him and Vita Vea, probably, outside of the linebacker room and Levante Davis and what he's meant to this team, probably the two most important linchpins of that group there, and the guys that could potentially make life a nightmare for Spencer Rattler in that back end of the defense.
Yeah. Tampa Bay has given up a lot of yards passing, almost 260 yards. They're the third worst defense by yards, so they can be had throwing the ball again if Spencer Rattler has time behind. I mean, Derek Carr's only been sacked 5 times, but he's been pressured a lot, and the injuries on the O-line certainly don't help.
Yeah, we talked about this last week when we identified that matchup with the Chiefs. We said Chris Jones going to be a problem. Chris Jones had the fastest game in terms of get-off, according to Next Gen Stats, in the last 3 years. Now, Vita Vea is not Chris Jones, but
right.
He's one of the most unique mismatches in the NFL, and not a guy I would like to see in the middle of a defense that my beat-up interior offensive line is getting ready to face. So, again, a lot of this is going to be the health of that Buccaneers defense. But I don't know. I am a big believer in the ability of Spencer Rattler. He was a guy that intrigued me in the pre-draft process. And at the very least, I am excited to see what the agenda has in store for this weekend in the NFC South. Coming up next, we'll check out what we've got in store for a big slate in college football this weekend, including the biggest Big Ten matchup so far this season. I want to get to the biggest matchup of the weekend coming up here shortly in college football. We went from last week's slate where we went in sort of relaxing a bit before every upset in the world decided to happen while Notre Dame, LSU, and Texas were on bye, and I remain incredibly thankful for that feat from last weekend. But going into this one, there's no place to hide. A ton of incredible ranked matchups, including one that I think deserves a better billing. Obviously, it's a ranked matchup between number 9 Ole Miss and number 13 LSU, but this is also a matchup of two coaches that just genuinely seem to hate each other's guts. Lane Kiffin and Brian Kelly have both traded barbs in the media with each other over the years. They represent very opposite ways of doing things here, but they both have an underlying respect, at the very least, for the players on the other end of the field. This is Brian Kelly talking about Ole Miss QB Jackson Dart the other day.
Programs that are successful right now, the quarterback is central to driving these programs. And make no mistake about it, Jackson Dart is driving this Ole Miss. Now, they have great complementary players. Trey Harris, wide receiver, is outstanding. They have elite players on the defensive side of the ball, and they're well coached. So they're deserving of their ranking.
So that was BK on the Paul Feinbaum show the other day, saying all the right things about this game. But, Dad, this one going to be all about the sideline reactions for me, even though there should be tons of points in this one. Ole Miss is a 3-point road favorite in this game going to Death Valley, which we know is pretty rare, but I think it's as simple as right now. We saw, especially last week against South Carolina, who was beat up at running back and quarterback going into that game. The Ole Miss defense ends up being the difference. Walter Nolan and some of those guys they spent big bucks on this offseason paid dividends there, and I think it's going to be the same here because LSU has not displayed much of a bite on that side of the football.
No. LSU's defense has struggled. While they have great athletes, have struggled for the last couple of years. Lost Perkins for the year to the ACL. Their rush end that hurts them. And you're right. I think this would be a high-scoring game, and I would trust the Ole Miss defense more than LSU defense in this one. But man, Jackson Dart. I mean, talk about one basic receiver. Trey Harris leads the team with 53 receptions. Next closest is Caden Lee with 18. I mean, so they're kind of a one-man show. And on the other side, for LSU, Nussmeier has gotten 4 different receivers with at least 20 receptions, 28, 27, 25, and 20. So he spreads it out a little bit more. But I'm with you. I trust the Ole Miss defense a little more, definitely a lot more than the LSU defense in this game. This is going to come down to big plays because both offenses are capable of it.
Yeah, certainly. That feels like the easy formula for this one. High-level quarterback play. This is going to be a ton of fun to watch in a year where we said going into the season, college football had this turnover of so much elite quarterback play. Jackson Dart was one of the names we knew, but Garrett Nussmeier is one of the names we found out. Week 1 of the season, on the road playing in Las Vegas against USC, where it's him going toe-to-toe with Miller Moss at USC and just seeing what he was capable of, Dad. And I think for LSU, the disappointment this year has been somewhat surrounding the run game. You came in with 2 great offensive tackles, 2 guys that are going to be well thought of, especially Will at left tackle, as draft guys later on. That doesn't seem to still have the ability, or hasn't for a lot of this season, to get downhill and run the football. And remember, Brian Kelly said, interview 1, game 1. We want to do that to take some of the stress off our quarterback. And instead, they figured out very quickly the quarterback can handle this. It's unfortunately the run game that's still coming along for the ride.
Yeah. Neither run game on neither one of these teams is really producing a ton. So you'd love a balanced attack, but you're just not going to get it in this game. You're going to get it. You're going to get both teams airing it out. So it's going to come down to the defenses getting pressure on the quarterback as far as the outcome of the game is concerned. But I do think it'll be a high scoring game. But I like Ole Miss. Yeah,
Ole Miss going to take care of that one. I mean, everyone's kind of playing second fiddle right now to the game, Dad, that I think is the most mystery around it in Ohio State and Oregon, just because Ohio State's been the team we've talked about all offseason, this $20 million roster, and so far they've gone out and they've looked worth it. There were a couple of slow starts at the beginning of the season that maybe you could quibble about, but then going out and doing what they did, especially 200 yards on the ground against Iowa last week, they walk into this one, I think, with as much confidence as I've had in that team in a while. And on the other side, Dad, for Oregon, I think this is a team, too, that once we saw them with a couple of close games specifically, I mean, Idaho to start the season, Boise State and the Ashton Genty, so really getting its hook into the Heisman conversation with his performance against Oregon, that's going to go a long way in legitimizing a group of 5 running backs' ability to go out and put up bonkers numbers at a level of football that some people aren't going to respect enough to give credence to. But being able to point back to that Oregon game to legitimize that on one side, while on the other side for Oregon, Dad, it invited a lot of questions about that team and their ability to go and hang in a conference that I thought they were going to win going into this year based on what they had built on both sides of the ball. The offensive line's gotten better. The defensive line is still deep and talented, Dad. And Austin, to me, is the biggest factor in all of this. One of my favorite places I've gotten to visit and call a football game. That crowd is raucous, they are active, and that is an environment that Ohio State just hasn't had to face yet with this current core of players. Will Howard's a veteran guy. He's been around and been through the fire, but for this current Ohio State squad, this still represents something a bit different than what they've seen so far.
It does, but I think Ohio State can control the game with their running attack. I do think they'll be able to run on Oregon. Oregon, not a very good rushing team, but they've given up the rush, that's for sure, and Ohio State can run the ball. So I think that's a great way to kind of quiet the crowd down by controlling the clock, controlling time of possession, keeping the ball and just kind of running and running. Obviously, they're going to throw as well, but I think they can control the ball running, and that's a great way to keep the crowd out of the game.
No doubt about it, and that's going to be a huge factor in this. That's where Chip Kelly's paid the biggest dividends for this team by far, is coming over and infusing life into that offense, specifically the run game, under Ryan Day that had been suffering in that way since he'd come over and post Urban Meyer. And so I think that's in a weekend where there's going to be a bunch of ranked matchups. Penn State's going to USC. That's certainly going to be big. I think the Ohio State and Oregon game is going to be the one where we find out a lot about both teams after this game.
It's also going to be one where probably both teams are going to make the playoffs, right? It's kind of like Georgia, Alabama. So it's like both teams are going to make it, but obviously the winner has an edge up on winning the conference and having one of the automatic buys in the 1 through 4 seed. So this again goes to people who don't like the expanded playoffs, saying, well, it doesn't matter because these two teams may make the playoffs and may play again. But as I said, you hope it's a game like Georgia, Alabama. You hope it's a good game. I'll take great games, even if they're rematches and rematches of rematches for a third time in the playoffs. I don't care. Give me a good game, and I'm good with it.
It's a great point that the complaint from a lot of people this year has been, well, if we assume both of these teams are going to make the playoffs, then why is this one really important? Because we don't get a lot of these Saturdays, because we don't get to see Oregon and Ohio State play a lot, though we will going forward. This burgeoning part of Big Ten rivalry between two teams that have been among the premier programs in the country, we've seen with all these other games, still hits. That Alabama-Georgia game was still electric. That second half was one of the best halves of football we have seen and probably will see all year. So they can save the belly aching for somebody else. We've seen the real results on the field, and they're still incredibly exciting, even if, like you said, both of these teams look like they're going to still be able to make the college football playoff. If things go really wrong for Oregon and you're Penn State, all of a sudden that represents an opportunity to maybe be the other team that gets a bid out of this league. Work yourself into Big Ten championship contention since all that stuff's changed. So there are still stakes to the game here, and we're kind of constantly doing the math of, all right, who can actually win a national championship? There's making the playoff, which is important, and we know that's expanded to a lot of other teams, but we're all trying to sift through right now and mine for gold of who can actually go out there and look like they've got the pieces available to win a national championship. And right now that looks like a two-team race between Ohio State and Texas, the way we look at the top of the sport.
Yeah, and Oregon can have something to say about that this week, right? They can put themselves right in the conversation as they sit there ranked third, but we do have Texas and Ohio State above them in kind of a tier fashion. But Oregon, listen, there's beauty in deciding it on the field. And Ohio State and Oregon may get to do it once, twice, 3 times, just like Georgia, Alabama. You'll get chances on the field to prove it.
They certainly will. So those chances coming up this weekend. I want to hit on one more thing quick, Dad, a little bit of housekeeping from the NCAA Division Council outside of this. Did you see they did away with the national letter of intent? years ago, me going on Mike and Mike with you and Greeny to sign my national letter of intent that was actually just a blank piece of paper because I had already faxed it in, the magic of television. But kind of a sign of the times, Dad. The Division I Council, which again, college football is not really governed by the NCAA. They don't put on their championship. They've just come in and tried to punish people over the years. But it's not like college lacrosse or college baseball where they hold up that wooden trophy with the NCAA's logo on it at the end. There's a reason college football's always had a different trophy, because these people don't really govern it, but they do some of the accounting. And so when the D1 Council approved to eliminate the national letter of intent, and instead it's going to be replaced by a new financial aid agreement that'll provide a lot of the same core functions as the national letter of intent, which is basically like all the scholarship stuff, room and board, things like that. But it said also will likely be tied to contract related to impending revenue sharing model across college sports. So they're getting ready for this, Dad. While all this goes through the courts, they're trying to set the runway and prepare for revenue sharing, real revenue sharing, where the schools, not the collectives, actually have to give money to these players. So truly the end of an era here. I know this seems like a small thing for a lot of people, but the national letter of intent was part of college football lore for years.
It is kind of a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but I remember having you on the show, having Jake on the show, having your sister Sydney on the show, all signing your national letters of intent to perform at Notre Dame was a cool thing. And there is something to a player and fax. It'd be faxed in. It's amazing. It had to be faxed in for the player faxing it in and for coaches waiting to see if they got the fax, because that fax meant it was official, at least as official can be at the time, but waiting to see if you got the fax, because you could say you're committed all you want, but boy, once you got that fax, then you were committed. I mean, so it is a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but it is something that was kind of cool.
It is. And listen, well, we've done away with the fax machine portion of this years ago now. This is still going to involve pen to paper on an agreement. And Dad, the nature of that's going to be interesting, because the thing I've heard from a lot of people as of late, as we've seen this rash of players once we got to game 4 of the season, shutting it down to preserve their eligibility and getting ready to transfer in the offseason, I've heard a lot of people renewing the cry saying, we need some sort of formal arrangement that prevents this. Do you think there's any likelihood of that happening in the immediate future? Because I don't right now, based on the current power structure of what players can get from the courts. I think anyone would have a tough time trying to clamp down on players' ability to preserve that eligibility while there is not an employer and employee relationship explicitly stated by the way we structure this thing.
Exactly right. It's unlike the NFL contract, the contract that the college football player signed. So no, I don't see a way around that. And do we see it happening more? Again, the percentage will be so small, but the headline will be so big, right? The headline's bigger than the actual number of times I think it's going to happen.
I would agree. I just still think, and this is going to be, like you've always pointed this out, the problems we're presenting are difficult to solve because the dynamic in college football is so different than in the NFL in one key place, especially for players, and that's time. While the NFL stands for not for long, because we know it's difficult to try and keep your foothold in a league that competitive, in college football, you quite literally have a shot clock on you. You've got 5 seasons or 5 years to play 4 seasons in that sport. And so this idea of preserving eligibility, so you just have another chance to play, let alone earn, let alone get to the next level, is such a differentiating factor, even in the way people would want to govern this with contracts, Dad, where if you're talking about wanting to lock a player in, I get for the season so that they can't leave during the season or do anything like that. I can understand the frustration from the school side. But again, when you only have so many of these years, maybe that would force you to be a little bit more judicious with it during the offseason in the way you go about picking your school, deciding whether or not to stay at the place that you're at or go test the actual transfer portal. I still think that's a differentiating factor that's going to make me sympathetic to the players, because you only get so many of these. You don't have unlimited opportunity based on ability.
Yeah, you're in a box. You're in a box for an X amount of time, and that's it. So I agree with the players have an ability to move, and sometimes they make the wrong decision. Sometimes they move too much, and now you have another reason to move. You can move for money. Most move to try and play to make the NFL. And while 2% make the NFL out of college, 90% think they're going to make the NFL, and that's okay. That's okay. That's okay to chase your dream. whether it becomes a reality or not, it's all right to chase it, and players have the ability to chase it.
They do. Coming up next, we'll talk with one of the men at the helm of leading some of those players. Arkansas head coach Sam Pittman joins the show next. All right, before we get to Arkansas head coach Sam Pittman, it's time for Better Yet. Better Yet is presented by Larceny Wheated Bourbon. Lock in a win and seize tonight. Bardstown, Kentucky, 46% alcohol by volume. Think wisely, drink wisely. And as we look ahead to Thursday night football, we got the division showdown we mentioned before in the NFC West. The 49ers, 3.5-point favorites on the road in Seattle as of last night. I like the Niners to get off the schneid here. I think we saw that Seahawks rushing attack on defense really get exposed versus the New York Giants. It's a short week. They're banged up. For San Francisco, simplify the equation in the red zone, pound the rock, and prosper. Sam Pittman joins us next. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Hour number 2 here, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Coming up in about half hour, Warren Moon going to stop by. Dad, guy you played with back in the Houston Oilers days. I always have to check myself on that one. You guys got the beautiful baby blues. Also was a part of the new documentary on Amazon, The Evolution of the Black Quarterback. And so I think looking out at the current landscape of those guys, going to be really interesting with him as we've talked about the evolution and accessibility of that position to more people. We know the things that kept black players out of that position for so long, and those forces have now given way to a group of quarterbacks across the league, especially young black players that have been incredible, led certainly by Jaden Daniels this season. So I know back then for you, did it feel, revolutionary at the time when you're going through it, at the time that you were playing, where that was much less the norm?
I mean, listen, it didn't feel revolutionary for me. Warren Moon was the best quarterback, one of the better quarterbacks, so he should play quarterback. I mean, it was pretty simple for me, but obviously not simple for the black quarterbacks who were kind of kept away from that position in just an idiotic fashion. I think the black quarterbacks have proven that they can handle the position just fine and always could.
Yeah, it's certainly been the case. So excited to talk to him about that one and visit there as we look ahead to some of the NFL slate. But we were talking some college football in the last hour and want to keep doing it with one of the guys that was the architects of one of the big upsets and field stormings that we saw this last weekend. Arkansas head football coach Sam Pittman, kind enough to join us this morning. Coach, how you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling great, guys. It's good to be on with you. It's good to see you, and both of you looking great this morning.
Appreciate that.
Coach, we're trying to get like you. I'd imagine it's felt great around Fayetteville this week. What has the aftermath of the field storming, that upset, and a huge win for you guys felt like this week?
Well, for the community, for the state, we're the only Power 5-4 team in the state. No professional teams here. And we got a AA ball club out here in Bentonville, but just when our teams go here at the university, the state kind of goes with us, and it's really a lot of fun to see the enthusiasm, the folks with their chest out, happy about the Hogs. Our team, we were elated. We weren't surprised. We have a good football team. We've had turnover problems. And, you can't just say we turned it over. Our opponents, A&M and Oklahoma State, who we lost to, they forced the turnovers, so they had part of that to do with that as well. But when we win the turnover battle, we've got a pretty good football team, or even with the turnovers. And so our team was elated. Our fans were elated, but we weren't surprised. We've got a good football team.
How about let's go to the end first, and I mean the real end, the storming of the field. You've been coach for a long time, which started as a GA in '84 at Pittsburgh State and coached at a lot of places. How many the field stormings have you been a part of, and what was your thought as you saw all the fans storming the field?
Well, to answer the question, two. One was my second year here. It was against University of Texas. And the difference, to be honest with you, was, this game went to the last play, the last play before we really knew obviously what the outcome was going to be. Texas, I think we were up maybe 20 or something like that. We were kneeling on the ball. So the law enforcement, the guys at security, they said, hey, they're going to storm the field. We need to go in. I said, oh, hell no. I'm going to go talk to Sark. I'm going to shake his hand. So we did, and everything was fine. Now I got a bad hip. I got to get a hip replacement after the season. But so this year it was different because it went down to the last, and they said, well, we got to take you in. There's too many people going to be out here. I said, oh, hell no. I'm going to go talk to Hypo. And man, I got out there about the hash, and it was pandemonium. You couldn't even walk. And so there was a much different field storming. They tore up the goalpost, and all that kind of stuff. But it was something that, football is a lot about life. It's a lot about what you learn, and it's a lot about memories. And especially you guys both played at a high level, and to do it with your teammates and share it with the fans. I know we got fined and all that, but man, it was a special moment, one that you'll remember forever. And as long as I'm not paying the fine, so I was happy we got out there and celebrated.
That's what I was going to ask you. When did it enter your mind as the man running the football team that your team and the celebration just cost the administration $100,000?
Well, it's $250,000 now because they did a storm. They stormed we beat #1 Auburn at the time in basketball, and they stormed that one. So now it's up to $250,000.
Right. Actually,
Holly Rowe asked me after the game about storming the field, and I said, I really, right now I really don't care about that. She said, will the athletic director be mad? And I said, that ain't really the #1 topic on my mind right now. He'll have to deal with that, which he came back and said, hell, I don't mind doing it. We can beat #4 in the country. And it was our biggest win here at home in 25 years. So it was pretty special. And certainly we have to pay it, but I think they'd rather pay it than lose,
Yeah.
I'd say that's a pretty easy question and answer for them there. The tougher part was how you guys got to that point. Taylor Green goes down, and Malachi Singleton has to go into this game. So what are you telling him on the sideline as you get ready to send him out for a couple of the most important series of this game in a clutch moment?
Yeah, we have belief in him. Certainly, players play better the better people around them play. And so we went and challenged the offensive line. That was the biggest thing. We need to be able to run the football. We need to give Malachi, short throws where he can get his confidence out. We threw a little screen that went for about 15 that really started that last drive. He had a two-way option. He could have thrown the flare, thrown the tunnel. They dropped off on the flare through the tunnel, and Isaiah Satania made, 15 yards to start that. And then Braylon Russell ran another one for about 20, then ran another one for about 10. But the thing about it is that that's not the first time Malachi had been in with the one offense. And we have situations during practice that, let's say that it's ones, twos, and then we'll go back to if all hell breaks loose. In other words, you lose your left tackle. Well, your second team left tackle needs to be in there with those ones before it ever happens on a Saturday. He needs to get that confidence. And same thing with your quarterback. And so we'll have maybe 8 starters out there and 3 guys that, somebody went down. And we do that specifically so the kids will have faith in the guy walking into the huddle, and it seemed to pay off.
You're sitting at 4-2 right now. Big win over Tennessee. Week before, a tough loss to a ranked Texas A&M team. You have a hell of a schedule the rest of the way. You have a bye this week. How do you assess your team right now?
I like them. I've always liked them, though, because of their leadership, because of the locker room. I think anytime you have the team, you question, well, do we have the team? Do we have the team? And we've probably all been on ones that the team was very together and ones that the team was, they were apart. When kids start regurgitating what you say in press conferences, you got them. Because they're listening to you. They believe in you. I've always liked this team because of the leadership on the team. It's unfortunate that we've lost the 2 games. Now, Texas A&M is a good football team. Oklahoma State was a good football team. But our biggest thing is that we had to stop turning the football over. And once we do that, I really believe we can play with anybody out there. And Saturday kind of proved that. But I like where we're at. We were beat up. We hardly had any tight ends to play in the game. And so this week, we're trying to get healthy. Since I've been here, the COVID year, we didn't have a bye week. but the last three we had a bye week and we're undefeated. We beat Mississippi State here. We went to Auburn and won, and last year we went to Florida and won off a bye. So we've talked to the kids about what we're doing this week, if we'll buy into it, that it's proven to be a good formula for LSU coming in here next Saturday night.
Going to be a big-time matchup, no doubt. Bye couldn't come at a better time for all the reasons that you mentioned there. Coach, zooming out a little bit more big picture, we've seen in the last few weeks in the sport plenty of change. You mentioned the buy-in, the leadership on your team. We've seen plenty of places where, guys after 4 games have been making that business decision, shutting it down, preserving the red shirt. Some guys announcing transfer. It's a big change in the sport from when you first got into this. I'm curious, as the man at the helm of one of these big-time programs, how you've felt those changes and how it maybe has changed your approach to managing your roster and leading your team with all these new forces in play.
Well, the change has also come with, we're paying the players, so to me, if they elect, not to play on your football team, well, then I think there is a situation there where you may elect not to have the NIL available as well, and so, if I'm at a job and I refuse to go to work, I'm probably not going to get paid. So I think there's different things, but what we've got to do is take the coaches and the coach's decision, to me, out of it. In other words, we need to give these kids 5 years, and that's what you have, and you don't have to worry about a guy, like the UNLV situation and all. You don't have to worry about that. He can play and he's not losing. He can play 5 years. And I think we have to go to that right now, because it's next year, you're going to go to a 105 team allotment. And if that continues to happen, and we can't go out like the NFL and trade for somebody and get somebody, and we can't do that. So I think at some point we have to make decisions that are for the health of football teams, for the health of the kids out there. And if we don't change that, I think we're going to have more injuries, and nobody wants that.
Yeah, obviously the portal is one way to get players, but the other is the old-fashioned way, recruiting the 18-year-olds out of high school. How different is it now, sitting in a 18-year-old's living room talking to his parents, and one of the questions is, how much am I going to get paid? Even though you don't control that, you still get the different questions.
Well, if it's the first question out of their mouth, you better watch out. If they're not concerned about the atmosphere and where you're at and what you can do for them other than finances, you better watch out. We have really gone into where are they coming from. Let's talk to the parents, because people that's coming from a strong background family-wise, they're going to be less likely to get in the portal on you. It's not about who you get, it's who you retain a lot of times. And, because I remember we went 9-4 and we had 19 COVID seniors coming back. And I don't know, 2 or 3 of them went to the NFL. The other ones were just as vitally important to our football team. So, the older you get, a lot of times the better you're going to be. Yeah. But it's a totally different deal now, because you can. I think in my history, I've had a background of being a recruiter, and very, very difficult when finances come. It's like any of us. If I got 100,000, right, somebody else got 3, your chances of leaving, you're going to go take the 3. And so that's frustrating, because used to you outwork people in recruiting. Now it's almost getting to the point where you got to outpay them.
Yeah, it's certainly a different dynamic, but it's one that everyone, including you guys, have found a way to navigate to the point where you get to help tear down the goalposts and enjoy the moment like you guys did this last Saturday. Coach, congratulations again on the win. Enjoy the bye week, and best of luck the rest of the way. Hopefully we'll talk to you down the road.
Listen, when they asked me to come on with you two guys, I was excited about it. And keep doing a great job, guys.
Thanks, Coach. Really appreciate it. As a former offensive lineman, nothing I love more than seeing the O-line coach, head coach, have a great time. So we appreciate you. Best of luck, Coach.
All right. Go Hogs. Thank you.
Welcome back. Our thanks to Arkansas head football coach Sam Pittman for stopping by with us. Always good to have added beef in here, Dad. I know we cover everyone. We're objective journalists and all that, mumbo jumbo, but again, there's a soft spot in my heart for a man of his stature and coming from the offensive line that's at the helm for a program that's also called the Hogs. It all just seems to fit.
I know. It just fits, doesn't it? I mean, a guy who's just been coaching, as I mentioned, his first job was a GA at Pittsburgh State in '84. You look at his resume, he's been place to place to place like most coaches have, but just a good dude, former O-line, just a good guy.
I wanted to ask him this because I feel like he's a man that shares our food sensibilities in a lot of ways. We feel like I kind of know Sam Pittman in that regard. And I saw this going around online yesterday. The question, Dad, was if we were canceling each other over food takes, what was your most cancelable food take? What's your most controversial take when it comes to what you eat at the table? And I don't feel like you're an incredibly controversial guy when it comes to your palate here. I have a few that I wanted to throw out that I think you'll agree with, except for one. I'm curious because I think you, like me, I look at this situation, and I think Sam Pittman would agree with us. Ketchup on hot dogs is fine. I don't understand the elitists that want to come in here and try and regulate what I put on tube meat that we don't even know the full context of.
Absolutely.
Putting fruit on or in cake is a waste of everybody's time. I am a firm
waste.
Now, I used to be much more staunch in my separation of any fruit and any dessert. There are some now where I will invite it into the party, but the people at weddings that have fancy cakes where you've got like strawberries infused inside and stuff, it's a waste of my time. It's a waste of my bite. I can't stand it. I figured you'd be with me on those two. Where are you at on avocado? Because I have stopped trying to hide my truth, especially being out here in California, where I figured if I went public with this, I would probably get escorted out of the state like Rob Saleh getting escorted out of the Jets building. I can't stand avocado. I think it's got both the taste and consistency of wet cardboard. I don't understand the appeal. I get it's a superfood. And for people asking, yes, I still eat guac on occasion because guac has a bunch of other stuff mixed in it because it's livened up a little bit, not like the cold, lifeless avocado that you've got to time or else it's going to go bad. It seems like way more trouble than it's worth as a food.
Guac has got to be 95% avocado, though.
I mean, but it's got, salt and other stuff in it, and there's the onions mixed in, and it's whipped up a little bit, and it's not supposed to be the star of the show. When you've got that sliced avocado on top of something, the consistency and the texture overwhelms and drowns out whatever the dish is, or God forbid these weirdos that just eat it with a spoon out of the avocado shell itself. It's disgusting.
I don't like it in slices that way, but I like avocado toast. I like it like spread on a piece of toast with an egg on it. I mean, I like avocado that way. I don't really eat avocado straight enough to say I would like it or don't like it. I like it mixed in with other food. It's like I didn't like avocado and then I did. I didn't like sour cream and then I did. Once I kind of gave it a chance. But avocado, I don't eat slices. Yeah, I'm not going to cut it up into chunks and eat it. I don't enjoy it that way. To me, it doesn't have enough taste.
To me, it just tastes sad. Like when it's just sad to me. I don't understand it. I don't understand the affinity for it. Like you said, all the situations you described, it's not asked to be the star of the show. And I feel like there are some people that see avocado as the star of the show in a way that I can't understand. The one that really should be the star of the show, Dad, and I don't know if this is appealing to you or not. I saw this, speaking of Major League Baseball's postseason. The Royals were hosting last night. The Yankees came in and unfortunately beat them on their turf. Royals fans had the chance to try this dish. It's the Sweet Baby Ray's Crown Sticky Buns. It's a croissant sheet, sticky caramel, cinnamon and brown sugar crumble with pulled pork and apple barbecue sauce on that. Where are you at on the combination of sweet and savory? I love weirdo ballpark food. At some point in my next life or as a part of the next iteration of this show, I have a ballpark food tour in my future, and this would absolutely be in my gut. They're matching my freak in a way that I really appreciate.
See, just like I don't like fruit in my dessert, and the biggest swear word to me is compote, where you just smash up the fruit and put it in. I can't stand it. I just scrape it off. I scrape it off the cake. I'm not a fan of compote. I will always ask to get, whenever there's something served with compote, I say to leave the compote off, please. I am not a mixer of sweet and savory. I am not really a mixer of sweet and savory. So while the beginning of that croissant sounded good, you stopped me with the pulled pork on top.
So wait, you're not like a
pork.
maple bacon donut guy then?
No, I'm not.
Wow.
I'm not. I like bacon and I like maple donuts. I don't like them together. I would love a Cinnabon, like you described with the croissant, and I like pulled pork. I don't like them together.
Wow. I'm a little bit stunned, especially, I mean, God, donuts have been sort of synonymous with you for an entire career, and maple bacon feels like it's the combination of all of your favorite. Have you tried it? Because I do feel like you do this every now and then where you're a 61-year-old man who at times eats more like a toddler. You like to keep everything very bland, very similar. You're not going out here like, God, I went on the trip to Japan, and all I kept thinking in a lot of these restaurants was, my father would hate this. All of the different combinations and things they're trying to trot out here. But I figured maple and bacon might be something that's still tolerable for you. That's a bit of an upset.
No, and I've tried it. God knows I've tried about every donut there is. I don't like Bavarian cream donuts. I don't like jelly donuts. I like a cream in a donut, but not Bavarian cream. And I've tried the maple logs with the bacon on it, and I don't like it. I like my sweet and I like my savory separate. I just do. It's like I'll eat my breakfast. I'll have bacon, but I won't put it on my waffle. I won't crumble it up on my waffle and eat it together. I'll eat it separately.
So Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles, is that out for you?
You know what? I actually like chicken and waffles.
Okay, all right. You know what? Honestly, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Human beings aren't supposed to exist in a world of absolutes. As Dominique Foxworth once said, absolutes are for babies and stupid people. It's not real. So you're allowed to like chicken and waffles. One, because it rocks. And two, because we don't have to be consistent with everything. It's so good.
Yeah,
It's
chicken and waffles
good.
is just fantastic. Yeah, I'm with you there.
I did inherit your disdain for jelly-filled donuts and Bavarian cream, though. I think filling donuts in general, kind of a waste of time. I didn't come here for all that. If you want to go, the thing I enjoy is like the layered ones where you make it almost like a sandwich, where at times I've seen a place that'll do like a cronut with an Oreo cream on the inside. That I can rock with, but I'm with you. Jelly-filled donuts, that's an abomination. Should not exist. Doesn't in my box ever. At GoJo Golic on Twitter. Keep it going. We need your controversial food takes here. Dad, do you have any controversial takes? We've led to some here. I don't know if you had something that for years has been a hang-up for you. It sounds like the sweet and savory might be that. I think we've hit on it.
I would say it's the sweet and savory. I am kind of like a toddler, and I separate like all my food. So I am a pretty simple man when it comes to that. But I don't begrudge people doing it. I like people that say, "Oh, you don't put pineapple on pizza." I don't care if you put pineapple on pizza. I'm not going to. I won't like that. But if somebody likes that, go ahead. Put ketchup on a hot dog. Go ahead. If you have a quirky kind of mixture, as long as you like it, go ahead. I'm not going to tell you, oh my God, that shouldn't be done when you like it. I just particularly don't like mixing certain foods.
I'm generally with you on that. Like pineapple on pizza to me is fine. I actually like Hawaiian pizza. I think it's really good. So that might be another one of these that I'm inviting to the table. The one thing I'm kind of judgmental on, Dad, and the thing that I can't tolerate, like the ketchup on steak thing that Mahomes does is one thing. I think that's kind of a waste and a weird thing. But the people that eat their steaks well done, cooked like a hockey puck, to me seems like a waste of that. Go eat hamburger meat. Go eat something that's cheaper. Why would you order a cut of meat that's going to cost you maybe into $100 plus on a menu at a restaurant and then cook it through in a way that makes it devoid of all taste?
Because they like it that way. I mean,
I'm saying they should.
I'm not going to.
They should want better for themselves, and I can't want better for them.
I'm not going to tell a person to not do something that they enjoy doing as far as food is concerned. I'm just not. If you like it well done, I don't. But if you do and you want to lay out your $100 for $80, $50 for a piece of steak and cook it well done, more power to you. Go ahead. I'm not going to invade your space.
Dad, I'm 100% with you. Generally, I say life is too short. Go do the things that you want. That's part of my hot dog take is all these elitists that want to come in and tell me that, oh, because they're from Chicago, I'm only allowed to put mustard and certain other condiments on it. No, a hot dog is, again, we basically don't know what's inside that thing. It's delicious, but we don't really know. And we're still eating it. So if you want to put ketchup on it, it is little kid food. You're eating little kid food if you're eating a hot dog. My point with steak is you're eating grown-up food, and if you cook your steaks well done, I think you're a bad person.
I just, last night, we cooked up your mother did some chicken nuggets and I mixed it in rice, but she made a whole bowl of variations of vegetables, beans and broccoli and carrots. And I looked at the bowl and I said, I'm not putting that in here. She said, yes, you are. I was like, wait a minute. I want to mix chicken and rice. I like that, and you want to make me invade it with mixing in the bowl, not just one vegetable, but a mixture of vegetables. I don't really like vegetables. I don't really eat vegetables, but your mother prepared it, so I mixed the vegetables in with the rice and the chicken.
I was going to say, you did what you were told. That's why I always tell people when they're like, Mike, wow, your dad looks so good. We're calling him his zaddy, all this weird stuff. How's he done it? I'm like, he's done it by doing what my mom tells him. Mom deserves as much or more credit for your body than you do because she's the one that stocks the house with the food. She's the one that prepares it. She's the one that drags you to the workout classes here. Like, you have body by mom.
And she gets all the benefits of the zaddy.
Don't.
All right. Yeah. Bow chicka bow wow. Bow chicka bow wow.
Any of you in the control room, if you think about going and grabbing porn bed music, I swear to God, thank you for someone finally having my back here. I was tortured for years by this crap, and I led myself into my own trap in this case. I don't feel great about this now. I'm sorry, Mom.
I should have it ready to play. I should have had it on my phone ready to go. Knowing those guys wouldn't have it ready.
I'm really glad you didn't. We were supposed to do college football tiers this segment, and instead I think we ended up doing food power rankings. You know what? How about this? I'll give you the easy tiers for college football right now. Yeah. There's Texas, there's Ohio State, and then there's about everybody else at this point. Now, I think that everybody else, technically, Dad, would include like Georgia, Alabama, Miami, Penn State, all of those teams firmly in the mix, Oregon in that mix as well, of teams in that next group down that either have suffered a major loss this season or are incredibly talented, remain blemish-free, but like Miami have some questions coming off a couple of close games the last few weeks. How about that?
So, in actuality, in the second tier, Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, Miami were two close wins, and Penn State. Are you putting Penn State in that second tier?
I think I would, yeah. I think they are a talented team that went out and made real changes to the offense, bringing Andy Kotelnicki over, and we've seen it bear fruit so far with Drew Aller, their quarterback. My question still remains like it was the last couple of years. We saw Drew Aller play well against the non-Ohio State and Michigan teams last season, and then when they played there, they were throwing the ball under 5 yards every play and failing to move down the field. So I still want to see it against upper-level competition, and USC is an interesting test for them this weekend in that regard. USC is much improved on defense, reeling a bit in the last few weeks, and I think specifically their back end is a little bit more primed to be able to be had than maybe the front seven. And so while the running back room was certainly the sell with Penn State on offense and still is, I think this passing attack can continue to develop against USC's secondary.
And again, James Franklin's thought they're going out today to USC because he did talk about the travel issues of Penn State in the small airport. They can't take a plane big enough to leave out of the airport. They have to drive an hour to Harrisburg, and then it's still a 5.5 hour flight. He was actually saying that the airport at Penn State needs to expand a runway because of the conference change and the trips they're going to have to make to the West Coast to be able to take a big enough plane from Penn State.
Hey, that stuff is real. I'll never forget. We were flying to play Washington State at the Alamo Dome in Texas, and we bring in more people with us because it was the Shamrock Series game. Bigger plane, South Bend, same deal. Small runway. We take off at a steep angle because you got to go faster and take off steeper to get out of there when it's short. and we hit an air pocket and free fell for what felt like 10 seconds. And I will never forget looking over. All of us are like freaking out, screaming. And our linebacker, Torian Smith, is standing there in his seat with his arms and face towards the heavens, ready for the Father to bring him on home. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen, but also a scary reminder that taking off on a short one day can come with drawbacks. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic as we get set to look ahead to a weekend in the NFL. Pumped to get to talk to our next guest here, one of my dad's former teammates, Pro Football Hall of Famer Warren Moon, kind enough to join us here now. Warren, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How you guys doing? How you like working together? Have you started fighting each other yet, or is that why you live on different coasts?
Listen, Warren, this started my last few years at ESPN. We did the morning show together with Trey Wingo. And
oh, yeah, I remember.
You would think that your son, in starting in the business that you had been in for a couple of decades, would kind of be, reverent to you and such. He wasn't. He just started arguing with me right away. Started ripping me right away, calling me old man right away. So yeah, it's been rough.
Well, that's what made your show. That's what I liked about it. You guys went after each other, and he didn't back down. He stood up to his old man, and here you guys are still together many years later. So something's working.
Yeah, it cost him though. I think the friction cost him his hair. That's the only problem.
Hey, you know what? Right. I am in good company
I
here.
think we have the same barber.
You know what we do? We have a simple process for getting ready to go out anytime we leave the house. So we have simplified the equation. And like you said, it worked out and it got us all here. Now, Warren, lots we want to talk to you about, but I'm curious for you. We talked about a little bit earlier in the show, the documentary on Amazon, The Evolution of the Black Quarterback, something I know you were named in and a part of, and getting to see what Michael Vick kind of took everyone through in there. What was that like for you, seeing that story told of a very proud brotherhood that you're a part of?
You know, it was eye-opening. It was kind of psychologically helpful, I guess, because a lot of those things you don't really want to talk about and you don't want to remember that you had to go through. But Michael did a great job of bringing that out of all of us, and all of us who went through some very tough times, you know, trying to play this position. So there was good things about it, and I guess it turned out okay. I haven't really watched the whole series yet. I'm gonna sit down one day and just devote myself a couple hours to just watching it. But yeah, I was glad to be a part of it. I'm glad he got the participation he did from all the other guys. He kind of went from the beginning all the way up till the present. So I think people get a good understanding of what being an African-American quarterback was all about, starting from the beginning and where it's evolved to. And it's in a really good place right now, I'd like to say. There was like 15, I think, African-American quarterbacks started on week 1 of the NFL season this year. So that's something I feel a little bit of pride about, because I feel like I played a small part in that.
Well, you obviously did. After your time at Washington, didn't know about the shot you would get in the NFL, so you actually went to the CFL, won 5 Grey Cups with the Edmonton Eskimos. So take us back to that time of not wanting to go to the NFL right out of Washington, going to the CFL.
Yeah, it was kind of a bittersweet time, Mike, because, you know, coming out of college, I felt like I'd put myself in a position to at least get drafted and maybe be considered a quarterback in the NFL. That was kind of my goal and my dream as a kid. And, you know, I was a Pac-8 Player of the Year. I was Rose Bowl's most valuable player, and I thought I had a really good season and thought I would get some more NFL interest. But most teams were talking about moving my position and moving me to defensive back or wide receiver. And if I was going to get drafted, maybe it was going to be at the end of the draft. There was 12 rounds during that time. So they were talking about round 10 through 12 or something. Maybe I might get a chance to play quarterback. So all those maybes and questions really made me evaluate, you know, what was my best opportunity. And the Canadian Football League was treating me as if I was a 1st or 2nd round draft pick coming out of the NFL draft. They gave me an opportunity to come play the position I wanted to play, a position that I really felt like I was good enough to play. And that's why I decided to go there, as opposed to taking a chance and going through the NFL draft. So I wouldn't trade it for the world because of the experience that I had up there. But there's no question it was a bittersweet thing, because I wanted to be drafted like every other, you know, guy that comes into the National Football League. And well, not every guy, but some guys sign as free agents, but at least they get the chance to play where they want to play. And that's all I really asked for, was the opportunity to play quarterback. If I wasn't good enough, you know, cut me. If I wasn't good enough, I'd go back to school and I was going to go to law school if I didn't make it in football. But I continued my dream of going to Canada and trying to be the best player that I could be. And I worked myself into a position where things worked out pretty good for me.
Yeah, I think you would have done pretty well in law school, but I think all of us are glad that you kept pursuing the dream in football, because it worked out well for you and a lot of people that got to play with and around you there. So an incredible journey that led you to that moment, and like you said, laid the foundation for so many others to come since. I want to talk about some of the new guys in the league right now. Jaden Daniels has sort of taken the league by storm through the early portion of this NFL season. What have you liked, or what have you seen out of that rookie that's allowed him to be so successful so soon?
Yeah, you know, I met Jaden when he was a sophomore at Arizona State. We were involved in a panel discussion, believe it or not, on African-American quarterbacks. And I got a chance to know him a little bit, really was impressed with his poise and his maturity at like 19, 20 years old. And so it's not surprising me what he's able to do right now with the Washington Commanders, because he played a lot of college football. I think he had over 50 starts. He played in the toughest division in college football in the SEC, and ended up winning a Heisman Trophy. So he's a very talented guy. Like I said, he's very poised and very mature, and doing a great job with that offense. I think he's passing at almost a 78% completion percentage, which is crazy for a young rookie who hasn't been around these receivers very long. But he also does a great job with his legs, and he uses great judgment when he takes off the run. He's going to look in that pocket to try and throw it down the field, but then when everything else breaks down, he uses his legs. So he's off to a great start. He's really changed the whole environment and culture there in Washington, and that's something you want a young quarterback to do when you draft him that high in the draft, to come in and change the way things are done. And I think between him and Dan Quinn, the head coach, they've done a great job so far. They're off to a great start.
And Warren, only about a minute left. How about overall the evolution of the quarterback position of where it is today from where it was?
Well, you're starting to see now more of a dual threat type of quarterback, and it doesn't matter if you're African American or what color you are. You look at Josh Allen, you look at all these guys, Trevor Lawrence. They're all able to move because these defensive players now have become so fast. You got defensive ends coming off the edge at 4.3s and 4.4s, and as a quarterback, you got to have some athleticism to you to avoid some of those plays because they're not going to get blocked all the time. So I think having that dual threat ability is going to make you more valuable in today's football. And I think that's where you see not only African-American quarterbacks, but all quarterbacks. The more athleticism they have these days, the better that I think they're going to be and the more successful they're going to be.
I think you're so right. The approach of defenses has made it almost a place where you need that player with the physical ability to almost be a human check down in order to have a chance against some of these guys that they've got turned loose on the other side. So it's been incredible to watch that development here, and we're only just getting started with this weekend. Some of the great play from guys like Jaden Daniels that you mentioned. Warren, we appreciate all the time and the insight this morning. Thanks so much for getting up early with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys, and you're doing a great job with your show. Keep it going, and tell Bobby I said hello.
Oh, I will. I will. Take care, Warren. Thanks, man.
All right.
I mean, a guy who's thrown, Mike, he's thrown for over 70,000 yards between CFL and NFL. I mean, it's amazing. And why he had to go to the CFL, and boy, it sure worked out there with 5 Grey Cups.
Yeah, well, and it's just a reminder to this point, everyone wants to get drafted. Everyone wants to be Jaden Daniels and get taken second overall, but there are so many different paths throughout pro football. And I remember that was the eye-opening thing, is the pride that guys, when I came in and got a shot at NFL training camp, seeing a guy like Ryan Clark, who was a leader on that Pittsburgh Steelers team, who had been an undrafted free agent, Ramon Foster on that offensive line, who I got to play around for a while. Those guys and the pride they took in overcoming where they started to get to that point is immense.
Well, I mean, even Warren going back to the early 80s and talking about his situation. I mean, think of Lamar Jackson when he came in the league. There were some GMs that thought he should have moved to running back, and how wrong they were about that.
Whew. Yeah, Old Takes Exposed had a field day with that one. Good grief. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick ones to send you to the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku. Plenty of great streaming options where you can see us. But if you got to miss us live or any of our great guests, thank you to Arkansas head football coach Sam Pittman and Hall of Fame quarterback Warren Moon for joining us to chop it up a little bit. You can catch those interviews wherever you get our podcasts or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. Dad, let's start off with this. Detroit versus everybody's been the rallying cry for a while, but apparently Detroit itself decided they would pick the fight this time. So, Equanimeous St. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown, two brothers, both NFL wide receivers at different points. Amon-Ra, currently a star for the Detroit Lions, do a podcast together. Can't imagine family members doing shows. Doesn't seem like it's something that'll work out. But EQ at some point on the show got to a diatribe about the city of Detroit, and he said not a lot of nice things. Now, Equanimeous has played for the Chicago Bears. He's played for the Green Bay Packers at different points and went out of his way to say that if people had the ability to choose, no one would choose to live in Detroit. And so the city of Detroit's Twitter account decided they would go and say something. Man, we know it's hard when baby bro is outshining you, but you don't have to take that out on us, Equanimeous. Our population has actually grown for the first time in more than 6 decades, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Detroit now ranks as the 26th most populous city in America, to which EQ responded, well, hopefully you crack the top 25 next year. To which Detroit responded, hopefully next year you don't have to move to another city. The admin at the controls had the time today, and I don't know if you come back from that one if you're EQ, who is currently on the New Orleans Saints practice squad, is a guy that has, like I said, been around and played some ball around the league and is a former Notre Dame Fighting Irish guy, so we have to support him, but I do think this round goes to the city of Detroit.
Without question. I don't know if it ever serves a good purpose to rip a city to live in. I just don't know what purpose it serves, and then to have a social media that comes back the way they did. They came back well. So that was I think a knockout for Detroit, I would say.
Let me tell you what, city shaming and the results, devastating, especially on. I didn't realize how hard people like to cape for their cities. Because, Dad, we spent most of our life growing up in Connecticut. Now, you're from Cleveland. You're from a place that's got an identity, and the people there have a tremendous amount of pride in where they live. I was a bit of a nomad growing up, but from 3rd grade on, lived in Connecticut. And I'm not someone that beams with a ton of state pride. Like, I'm not going to go after you if all of a sudden you're attacking Hartford, Connecticut, or Avon, where we grew up. Like, we don't get down like that there. And so when in the past I would bring up where certain all-star games were held, bowl games, and the appeal of going to certain cities. It is amazing how much pride some places take and how much they reject the notion of being told that, hey, I would rather go to the Hawaii Bowl than the Motor City Bowl, and that's okay, even if I do love and respect the city of Detroit. Don't come for me the way that you came for EQ.
Yeah, that's I a little different than just flat out saying you don't want to live in the city. So, EQ got on that one, I would say.
Yeah, it was a tough one there. By the way, that was the actual choice that we had my freshman year at Notre Dame. It was down to, we were a 6-win team, so you're not dealing with a lot of options in terms of bowl games, but we were Notre Dame, so we had some. And it was the last two, the Sheraton Hawaii Bowl at that point, and then the Motor City Bowl in Detroit. And let me tell you what, it was a tense couple of days in the locker room while we were waiting that one out. The Hawaii Bowl, I always tell people, that was the most enjoyable bowl game experience. I played in the national championship, got to go do that down in Miami. The national championship's not fun. That's a work week. We always talk about these bowl games as a reward. That's a goal. You're there working your ass off trying to avoid all of the distraction. Bowl week for all the rest of them, the ones that players are skipping largely now, you're there to go get drunk on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, sometimes Thursday into that week and enjoy yourself around the town the way that we did in Hawaii and the way that was better than any other bowl game I went to.
And you look for a nice place to go. What teams that want to go to the Bahamas Bowl? I mean, and nothing against Detroit, but it's December. It's December. It's winter. It's not winter in Hawaii. It's winter in Detroit. I mean, that alone makes a case. Now, the travel is a lot easier to Detroit, but My God, you choose Hawaii because you go out there, you hit the bars, you have a ball, play a game, I guess.
Yeah, there's a football game on the back end of that, but a couple of luau's, a few trips to the beach, some surfing lessons. It's all great. I will say, shout out if we're showing love to cities, to El Paso. The Sun Bowl was lovely. The Sun Bowl committee's lovely. The city of El Paso rolls it out, the red carpet for everybody. So they're doing things right there.
It was freezing there, though. It was freezing cold there.
It was a little bit cold, which is why you just went to the three-legged monkey and made yourself warm there. It's a bar, not a strip club. I realize that could be kind of ambiguous. I've heard it has since closed, so rest in power to the monkey. Let's get to that, Dad, and this, that, and the third. This is something I feel is like up your alley. You're an Outer Banks guy, aren't you? Well, apparently you've got that in common with Luka Doncic. The NBA superstar tweeted out yesterday, Outer Banks Day, finally, with a bunch of fire emojis as he gets set to start the 2024 NBA season, Dad. Apparently he's already getting set to watch this season of Outer Banks. You watch this show, don't you?
Yeah. I would not put fire next to it. I don't know if I'll watch it. I finished season 3 because I had watched season 1 and 2, and I started 3. It's a show about, the Outer Banks, actually. It actually is the Outer Banks. The kooks against the pogues, the rich against the poor, but then it expanded to a worldwide search for a thought was a dead father. I mean, it got, I'm not going to lie, it got ridiculous. There was a bunch of 17-year-olds outgunning mercenaries in the jungle. I mean, it got ludicrous. Now, a lot of these shows do. You obviously, they're not real for a reason. But it got so far out of whack. And the way they ended season 3, you could either end the series or continue it. It was like one of those kind of ambiguous endings. And they decided to continue it. I don't know. There's too many other shows in the queue for me to watch than to go to the season 4 of Outer Banks. I just don't know if I can do it.
I have seen it described by a lot of people as like the best, worst show ever. And I'm with you. That was even like a tenet of Stranger Things I had a tough time with, was all these kids somehow being able to go here and out sleuth everybody else involved as like 11 and 12-year-olds. It's, in that one, at least it's sci-fi, so you can kind of take the narrative leap there, but Outer Banks doesn't sound like it's giving you. Dad, you could come over and watch Love is Blind with me. I'm only a few episodes into season 7 right now. But the DC version of the show looks like it is electric. I already have a couple of couples that I would absolutely go to war for. They've been incredible, but we know it doesn't really get started. We're about 6 episodes in. I think the next crop of episodes just dropped earlier Wednesday this week, so lots of catch-up to do, but you still got time.
Absolutely not. That will not be happening. No way, no chance. No, I'd rather watch season 4 of Outer Banks than watch Love is Blind.
All right, well, you know what, Dad? Let's get to the third and something that you should cherish getting to watch right now, because tennis star Rafael Nadal announced that he is retiring from the sport at the end of the year. The 38-year-old, who has gone on to 22 career Grand Slams, including obviously his dominance at the French Open on clay with 14 French Open titles there, has been hampered by injury, we know, for the last few years, and so he's going to play for Spain against the Netherlands in the Davis Cup in Malaga, November 19th to the 21st. That will be his final act on the tennis court, where, Dad, for him, alongside Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, was a part of the golden age of men's tennis that so many people talk about, and that now really has only one remaining entrant in the Joker that's taken up for these guys.
Yeah, and you wonder when it's going to end for him. Carlos Alcaraz is kind of taken over the sport, even though Sinner is ranked number 1. Yannick Sinner is ranked number 1 now, and Alcaraz is ranked 2. Joker is ranked 4th in the world at the latest rankings. But yeah, I mean, those matches, those rivalries between those three were just absolutely incredible tennis. But there's a new younger crop taking over, as happens in every sport. The time always catches up with everybody, and Nadal has been so beat up with injuries.
He has. It was kind of felt like a changing of the guard, seeing Carlos Alcaraz, a fellow Spanish player, winning at the French Open, winning on clay this year, as a moment where maybe he felt like he could leave the rest of the game to the up-and-comers. So congratulations to Rafael Nadal on an incredible career. Congratulations to y'all for making it to the end of this show. Download, subscribe, rate, and review the thing. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. We'll talk to you tomorrow.